Close your eyes and imagine Europe in the early years of the 19th century. The continent is a patchwork of kingdoms, principalities, and empires, each striving for power, recognition, and survival. The winds of change sweep across these lands, carrying whispers of war, alliances forged and broken, and the ever-present ambitions of rulers. At the center of this turbulent landscape stands a man unlike any other, Napoleon Bonaparte. Born on the Mediterranean island of Corsica, he rose swiftly through the ranks of the French military. His intellect, charisma, and audacity propelled him beyond the confines of ordinary life to BY 1812. He is the Emperor of the French, a figure whose very presence reshapes Europe. France stretches far and wide, from the Iberian Peninsula in the west to the borders of Prussia in the east, from the northern reaches of the Rhine to the southern valleys of Italy. Napoleon's rule is defined by strategy, discipline, and a vision of a unified Europe. He sees the continent not as a collection of disparate nations, but as an ordered, structured whole, under the guidance of a single mind, his own. Yet Europe is not so easily controlled. Across the Channel, Britain remains a formidable adversary. Its navy dominates the seas, and its economy resists Napoleon's continental system. Austria and Prussia tread carefully, wary of French dominance yet unwilling to provoke open conflict prematurely. And to the east, the Russian Empire looms vast and mysterious. Its winters are legendary, its lands seemingly endless, and its rulers proud and independent. Let us pause and observe Paris in the summer of 1812. The Tuileries Palace basks under a gentle sun. Soldiers march through cobbled streets, their boots echoing softly against stone. Carriages glide along the Seine, passengers moving silently, aware that history is unfolding beyond their immediate view. Markets bustle quietly, the hum of daily life intertwined with the shadow of military ambition within. This city, Napoleon prepares for his most audacious campaign yet. Reports arrive from across the empire. Troop movements, supply logistics, intelligence from distant outposts. Couriers arrive on horseback, carrying letters sealed with wax. Each message brings news, sometimes comforting, sometimes alarming. Maps are spread across wooden tables. Rivers are traced with careful precision. Roads and towns are noted, their positions cross-referenced with prior knowledge. Consider the Grand Armée. Over 600,000 men, drawn from France and her allies. Soldiers of every background, each trained meticulously. Frenchmen, Poles, Italians, Germans, and others, brought together by discipline, loyalty, and a shared belief in their emperor's vision. Horses paw the ground impatiently, their muscles taut with anticipation. Cannons gleam under the sunlight, their iron polished and ready. Officers oversee the loading of provisions, ensuring that each wagon is balanced, that food and ammunition are distributed with exacting care. Yet even the most precise preparation cannot fully account for the challenges ahead. The Russian lands are vast, their terrain unpredictable. Forests stretch for miles, rivers meander with sudden bends, and the roads, often little more than dirt paths, are treacherous under heavy travel. Weather, too, is a silent adversary. Summer heat can sap strength. Autumn rains turn fields into mud. Winter will later reveal its merciless nature. Let us pause again and imagine the minds of the soldiers. They are young, many barely more than boys. They carry muskets and sabers, their uniforms pressed and clean. Some sing quietly to keep spirits up, others whisper to companions about loved ones far away. Their anticipation is a mixture of excitement and fear. They march forward, unaware of the ordeal awaiting them. Napoleon himself contemplates the campaign with a mixture of confidence and calculation, that he knows his army is disciplined, experienced, and formidable. Yet Russia is a puzzle. Its size, its climate, its people, these are variables that cannot be controlled entirely. He studies maps, discussions with generals stretch late into the night. Every potential obstacle is examined. Every river crossing, every forest path, every town along the route considered. Meanwhile, Tsar Alexander I observes from St. Petersburg. Calm, measured, yet alert. Diplomatic correspondence continues, polite on the surface, but beneath the courtesies lie strategies and countermoves. The stage is set. Europe holds its breath. The coming months will determine the fates of thousands, perhaps millions. Imagine the landscapes through which the Grand Armée will pass. Rolling hills dotted with farms. Dense forests where shadows loom like silent sentinels. Rivers wide and slow-moving, occasionally treacherous to cross. Villages, some quaint, some struggling under the weight of taxation. Smoke rises from chimneys, blending with dust and the scent of summer fields. Picture the nights. Campfires flicker under starry skies. Soldiers huddle near embers, sharing quiet words, rehearsing the days ahead, nursing fears hidden deep within their hearts. The crackling of firewood is the only sound, aside from distant animals stirred by the movement of men and horses. Napoleon, in these moments, is both emperor and strategist. He is aware that history will judge his actions. He measures risks, balances ambition with prudence, and plans with meticulous care. Yet he is human, and human plans are fragile. Pride, overconfidence, and the unpredictable nature of warfare are silent companions on this journey. Supplies are marshaled with extraordinary precision. Food for hundreds of thousands of men, fodder for horses, ammunition for artillery, all must move smoothly. Engineers construct bridges, repair roads, and reinforce structures where necessary. Every logistic decision carries weight. A single miscalculation can ripple across the campaign with disastrous consequences. Let your mind wander further into the daily life of the army. Soldiers check and clean weapons. Officers inspect ranks, ensuring proper formation. Medics prepare for inevitable casualties. Carpenters and blacksmiths work tirelessly, shaping wagons, repairing equipment, and maintaining readiness. The orchestra of preparation is vast, silent, and ceaseless. Beyond the immediate, the psychological preparation is equally vital. Soldiers are briefed on strategy, the importance of cohesion, and the expectations of their emperor. Morale is carefully maintained. Songs, letters from home, and small comforts serve as anchors against the unknown challenges of the journey. And yet the unknown looms large. Russia, with its vast distances and harsh climate, presents a challenge unlike any other Napoleon has faced. Every mile eastward is a step into uncertainty. Every forest, river, and settlement may hide obstacles or opportunities. The fate of Europe, it seems, may hinge on the coming months. The march, the battles, the decisions of a single man, and the resilience of those who follow him as the summer of 1812 approaches. Imagine the quiet intensity in Paris, the cities along the route, and within the camps of the Grand Armée. The world seems to pause, listening for the first drumbeats of a campaign that will echo through history. This is the calm before the storm. The stage is set for ambition to meet reality, for discipline to confront the forces of nature, for a campaign to test the limits of human endurance. Relax, breathe, and absorb the scene. Let the sounds of the past, the marches, the whispers, the distant rivers, the crackling fires, fill your imagination. In the next moments, we will follow Napoleon and his army as they step onto the vast Russian lands, unaware of the trials, the losses, and the unforgiving winter that await them. Sleep, if you wish, as the story begins, and remember, history is not only about victories and defeats. It is about people, landscapes, choices, and the inexorable path stretched toward its peak. The streets of Paris hummed with quiet anticipation. Behind the grand facades of the Tuileries and the quiet courtyards of the École Militaire, a different kind of activity stirred, a preparation unlike any other in European history. Napoleon Bonaparte, supreme ruler and strategist, was poised to embark on what he believed would be his crowning achievement, the invasion of Russia. Picture the Grand Armée assembled in camps across the French territories. Soldiers of every nation, many hundreds of thousands strong, stood in rows stretching for miles. Frenchmen, Poles, Italians, Germans, and even troops from smaller allied states, each brought together under the banners of discipline, order, and loyalty. They marched in precise formations, their boots rising and falling with silent cadence, the dust of the earth disturbed only slightly by the careful rhythm. Officers moved among them with a practiced eye, every uniform scrutinized, every weapon inspected, muskets polished to a faint sheen, bayonets sharpened, and artillery carefully aligned. The horses, over 20,000 strong, pawed the earth impatiently, their muscles taut and ready. Cannon wheels were greased, gunpowder stored in carefully labeled barrels, and each supply wagon meticulously checked. The logistics of this campaign were staggering. Over 600,000 men would march east. Thousands of wagons carried food for soldiers and fodder for horses, ammunition for thousands of muskets, and cannons for artillery units. Engineers worked tirelessly, designing pontoon bridges, clearing paths, and reinforcing roads where travel would otherwise be impossible. Quartermasters kept endless lists of provisions, noting quantities, locations, and expected consumption rates that a single miscalculation could ripple through the army with catastrophic results. Yet beyond these tangible preparations, the psychological aspect was equally vital. Soldiers were briefed on the campaign's objectives. They were reminded of the honor in serving their emperor, of the discipline required to maintain order across such a vast expanse of land. Letters from home were distributed carefully, providing comfort and reinforcing morale. Small comforts, bread, wine, simple music, helped keep spirits intact in the face of uncertainty. Napoleon himself immersed in maps and intelligence reports. Days and nights blended as he studied river crossings, forests, and the roads that would carry his army to the Russian frontier. Every possible obstacle noted, every town along the route analyzed. The placement of Russian forces, however, remained a variable he could not control. He consulted with his marshals, listening to advice, weighing experience against ambition. Conversations stretched long into the night, their tones calm but deliberate. Picture a particular evening in the camp. The sun has dipped low, casting long shadows across the soldiers' tents. Fires flicker, smoke curling lazily into the sky. Soldiers sit quietly, some writing letters, others mending their equipment, and a few simply staring into the fading light, contemplating the journey ahead. The air smells faintly of wood smoke, leather, and the earth itself. There's a profound stillness, the kind that precedes great events, a calm tension that cannot be measured but is deeply felt by all present. Supply routes were carefully planned to ensure that the army could advance without interruption. Warehouses in Poland and along the borders were stocked with grains, salted meats, and preserved foods, each ration calculated to sustain men and horses for weeks at a time. Engineers mapped rivers, ensuring crossings would be possible even under heavy rain. Cavalry units practiced maneuvers designed to scout ahead and secure routes, while artillery units rehearsed deployment with meticulous attention to timing and spacing. Napoleon's attention to detail was unmatched. He understood that an army of this scale was vulnerable not only to enemy forces but to the environment itself. Roads could turn to mud, rivers could swell. Winter, months away, already loomed in his mind as a latent threat. Yet confidence remained. Confidence in his strategies, in the discipline of his troops, and in his ability to command. Meanwhile, in the Russian courts, Tsar Alexander I observed these movements with quiet concern. Diplomats exchanged letters filled with courtesies, but behind the polite words lay careful calculation. Russian officers studied maps, noting potential defensive positions, and villagers were warned of the approaching threat. The strategy was subtle. Avoid decisive engagement while drawing the enemy deeper into the vast interior, where nature itself would become an allied. As the weeks passed, the army moved closer to the Russian frontier. Imagine the countryside unfolding. Rolling hills dotted with farms, dense forests standing as silent witnesses, and rivers twisting through fields like ribbons of silver. Some struggling under taxation and the pressures of conscription watched the army pass. Smoke rose from chimneys, mingling with the dust raised by marching soldiers. The land itself seemed alive, reacting to the slow but unstoppable advance of human ambition. In the evenings, camps became microcosms of the empire. Fires burned in orderly rows, casting long shadows. Soldiers prepared food, repaired gear, and tended horses. Music and quiet conversation blended with the sounds of clanging tools and distant animals. The air carried the sense of the forest, the river, and the human presence that altered them all. Command tents were hubs of strategy and calculation. Napoleon and his generals discussed supply lines, scouting reports, and contingencies. Every river crossing, forested valley, and open plain was considered for its tactical advantages and potential dangers. Maps were studied, charts annotated, and messages dispatched. Even the smallest details, the angle of a bridge, the condition of a road, the morale of a particular regiment, were accounted for. Horses, too, were cared for with extraordinary diligence. Veterinary officers ensured their health, feeding them the best fodder, inspecting hooves, and maintaining tack. The strength of the cavalry was as critical as the strength of the infantry, for scouting and rapid response depended on it. Cannons were polished and mounted, powder measured precisely, and gunners drilled repeatedly to ensure perfect coordination. Soldiers, young and old, prepared mentally and physically for the journey ahead. Some wrote letters to loved ones, others whispered prayers. Some hummed quietly to themselves to stay calm. Each man understood, at some level, that this campaign could change the course of history and their own fates. And yet, amid all this preparation, the uncertainty of the future hung like a shadow. An amount of planning could account for the harshness of the Russian landscape, the ingenuity of its defenders, or the cruelty of the approaching winter. As the army finally assembled on the borders, imagine the panorama, miles upon miles of discipline. Troops, glittering cannon, and horses restless in the soft sunlight. The sheer scale was breathtaking, a moving testament to Napoleon's vision and organizational genius. And so, the stage was set. Europe watched silently. Paris buzzed with anticipation. Soldiers and officers alike waited for the signal to move, for the moment when ambition would meet the vastness of the Russian lands. The invasion was not merely a military maneuver. It was a convergence of human ambition, strategy, logistics, and the inexorable power of geography and climate. Relax. Let the details settle in your mind. The sound of boots on dirt roads, the flickering light of campfires, the whisper of letters being written, the subtle tension in the air. History is about to unfold, slowly, inexorably, and with consequences that no one, not even Napoleon himself, rose gently over the plains of Europe, painting the sky in pale gold and soft blue hues in the quiet of dawn. The Grand Armée prepared to take its first steps eastward. Soldiers checked their equipment one last time, adjusting straps, inspecting muskets, and ensuring every detail of their uniform and gear was in perfect order. Horses nickered softly, pawing at the soft earth, as if sensing the journey ahead. The initial march began with a rhythm both deliberate and mesmerizing. Rows upon rows of men moved in unison, their boots beating a slow, steady cadence across the dirt roads. Wagon wheels creaked softly under the weight of supplies, the occasional clatter of iron on stone punctuating the air. Cannons, polished to a dull gleam, were carefully maneuvered, their crews alert and disciplined. Imagine the scale of this movement. Over 600,000 men, stretching across miles of countryside. Cavalry scouts flanking the columns, eyes constantly scanning forests, rivers, and hills for signs of the enemy. Engineers rode alongside, noting obstacles and potential hazards, ready to construct bridges or repair roads where necessary. The countryside itself seemed to acknowledge the march. Fields of grain swayed gently in the breeze. Forests stood as silent witnesses, and rivers wound lazily through the landscape, glinting in the morning sun. Villages were quiet, with townspeople observing the army from a safe distance, smoke rising lazily from chimneys. Some waved quietly, others simply watched in awe or apprehension. The army moved with both purpose and caution. Napoleon's strategy relied not only on speed, but also on maintaining cohesion. Columns advanced steadily, ensuring that no unit would become isolated. For the soldiers, the days blended into one another. They marched for hours, paused to eat, rest, and tend to their horses. Some wrote letters home or whispered quiet prayers. Others simply observed the land through which they traveled, noting its beauty and its challenges. Nights were a delicate balance between rest and vigilance. Campfires flickered along the edges of the encampments, casting long shadows. Soldiers huddled close to embers, repairing clothing, mending equipment, or simply sharing quiet words with comrades. The scent of wood smoke mingled with the earthy aroma of the surrounding fields, creating a sense of both familiarity and tension. Meanwhile, Napoleon remained a figure of both presence and calculation. He traveled among the troops, inspecting formations, speaking briefly with officers, reviewing maps, and issuing orders. His presence was calm, yet commanding, inspiring confidence in those around him. The march was not merely a movement of men and equipment. It was a symphony of logistics. Supply wagons carried provisions carefully measured to sustain men and horses for days. Engineers monitored roads and bridges, repairing and reinforcing as needed. Cavalry units scouted ahead, signaling hazards and mapping the terrain. The psychological toll of the march was subtle but profound. Fatigue accumulated slowly, and the monotony of endless roads challenged both body and mind. Soldiers relied on routine, camaraderie, and the steady guidance of their leaders to maintain focus. Each man knew that endurance, patience, and vigilance would be as important as skill in battle. As the army progressed eastward, the climate began to shift subtly. The air grew drier in some regions, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth. Dust rose along the roads, clinging to uniforms and coating faces. Streams and small rivers offered brief respite, allowing men and horses to drink, but these moments were fleeting. The march also revealed the delicate interplay between human ambition and the natural world. Rivers could swell unexpectedly after rains. Muddy fields slowed movement, and forests hid both opportunity and danger. Napoleon's strategies accounted for much, but nature remained a constant, unpredictable force. Officers maintained meticulous records of progress, noting distances covered, rations consumed, and the condition of men and animals. Every decision, from when to rest to how to deploy artillery, was made with care, balancing the need for speed against the risk of exhaustion or disorder. Villages along the route offered glimpses of local life. Small markets continued to function, farmers tended fields, and children watched silently as the army passed. Some offered food or supplies. Others withdrew in caution, aware of the potential for both generosity and requisition. The sheer scale of the army's movement impressed both allies and adversaries. Cavalry units sent ahead to reconnaissance points returned with information about terrain, rivers, and possible Russian positions. Yet, the further the army advanced, the less certain they became of what lay ahead. Soldiers, despite their rigorous training, faced both physical and emotional challenges. Long days of marching, exposure to the elements, and the uncertainty of the campaign created a pervasive tension. Leaders encouraged small rituals, songs, letters, and shared meals to maintain morale. Imagine the nights under the stars. The sky stretched vast and deep, dotted with countless points of light. Fires flickered in the distance, shadows dancing against tents. Soldiers whispered quietly, tending to weapons, patching clothing, or simply staring into the darkness, the Grand Army's pondering the journey that feat of coordination. Infantry, cavalry, and artillery units advanced in careful alignment. Supply wagons maintained pace, and scouts relayed information continuously. Engineers prepared bridges, cleared paths, and ensured that no obstacle could halt the army's progress. That Napoleon's personal involvement reinforced discipline and confidence. He visited camps, observing men and animals, offering words of encouragement, and making precise decisions about the deployment of units. His calm demeanor in the face of logistical complexity instilled a sense of purpose throughout the army. As the weeks passed, the army encountered its first challenges beyond simple terrain. Minor skirmishes with Russian outposts occurred, testing the coordination of units and providing early lessons about the resilience of the enemy. These engagements were brief but instructive, allowing Napoleon's forces to adapt strategies and reinforce supply lines. The vastness of Russia began to make itself known. Rivers widened beyond expectations, forests thickened, and the distances between towns stretched longer than maps had indicated. These factors would grow increasingly significant as the campaign advanced. Soldiers adapted to the gradual hardships. They learned to conserve energy, manage limited resources, and maintain focus despite monotony and fatigue. Horses, trained for endurance, were carefully fed and rested to ensure they could continue through long days of marching. Supply wagons became both lifelines and sources of vulnerability. Maintaining their pace and condition required constant attention. Engineers inspected wheels and axles, blacksmiths repaired damaged parts, and quartermasters coordinated the distribution of rations with meticulous care. Each day of the march revealed the delicate balance between planning and unpredictability. Nature, terrain, and the unknown decisions of the enemy constantly challenged even the most detailed strategies. Napoleon's genius lay in his ability to adapt, to make swift decisions, and to maintain the cohesion of an army of unprecedented scale. As the army pressed further into Russian lands, the vastness of the landscape became increasingly apparent. Rolling plains stretched endlessly, forests grew denser, and rivers meandered unpredictably. Villages appeared less frequently, and the sense of isolation began to weigh upon both officers and soldiers. Imagine the nights once more. Stars blanketed the sky, fires flickered quietly, and the gentle rustle of the forest whispered around the encampments. Soldiers rested fitfully, mindful of the distance yet to be covered. The air carried the earthy scent of the land, mingled with smoke, sweat, and the faint aroma of camp meals. That Napoleon's leadership remained constant. His careful observation, strategic insight, and attention to detail ensured that the Grand Armée remained disciplined, focused, and coordinated. Every decision, from the placement of scouts to the timing of marches, was made with deliberate consideration. The march to Russia was more than a movement of troops. It was a test of human endurance, logistics, strategy, and resilience. Every mile covered brought the army closer to conflict, to hardship, and to history. Relax, breathe, and imagine the rhythm of the march. The boots striking earth, wagon wheels creaking, horses neighing softly, soldiers whispering, fires flickering in the evenings, and the vast, silent expanse of the Russian landscape stretching endlessly ahead. This is the story of ambition and preparation, a story in which meticulous planning meets the vast, unpredictable forces of nature. The Grand Army marches eastward, unaware of the trials, the frost, and the human suffering that await. Sleep lightly if you wish, as the tale unfolds, for the march is only the beginning of Napoleon's journey. Advanced deeper into Russian territory, the vastness of the land became increasingly apparent. Endless plains stretched beyond the horizon, punctuated by dense forests, winding rivers, and scattered villages. The army's impressive formation, stretching for miles, moved steadily, yet each mile eastward brought new uncertainties that Napoleon's generals expected confrontations, decisive battles that would bring swift victory. Yet the Russians did not offer such engagement. Tsar Alexander I, understanding the strength of Napoleon's forces, adopted a strategy both subtle and devastating. The scorched earth. Picture the Russian villages and farmlands as the French approached. Homes were abandoned, crops burned, and livestock driven away or destroyed. The air carried faint wisps of smoke, a haunting reminder that what once sustained life now offered nothing. Soldiers of the Grand Army arrived to empty fields, their stomachs and horses' needs unmet. Supply lines, carefully planned and rehearsed, strained under the unexpected scarcity. The psychological impact was profound. Soldiers trudged through landscapes that offered no comfort, no sustenance. The familiarity of towns and markets, common along previous campaigns, was replaced by desolation. Engineers and quartermasters worked tirelessly to find alternatives, foraging, rationing, and improvising with the scant resources available. Yet the vast distances and the scale of the army made this a Herculean task. Russian forces avoided full engagement, retreating strategically while leaving destruction in their wake. Skirmishes occurred, brief and sharp, testing the coordination and discipline of Napoleon's men. Cavalry scouts brought reports of Russian detachments appearing suddenly, then disappearing into forests or across rivers. Imagine a typical day in this advance. The sun climbs high, casting heat over the dry, open fields. Soldiers march, boots pounding the earth, dust rising in clouds. Wagons struggle through uneven roads, cannon wheels groaning underweight. Horses pant and strain, carrying men, weapons, and supplies across the unforgiving terrain. Officers communicate silently, using hand signals and brief whispers to maintain formation. The pace is steady but exhausting, both physically and mentally. Nights bring little respite. Campfires are small, carefully maintained to avoid attracting distant observers. Soldiers huddle near the embers, tending to equipment and horses, sharing quiet conversation to keep morale intact. The smell of smoke, sweat, and earth blends into a tangible reminder of the hardships endured. The strategy of scorched earth is effective. Every abandoned village, every destroyed crop, every emptied granary slows the French advance. Food shortages become a persistent threat. Horses weaken, soldiers grow fatigued, and tension mounts in the air. Napoleon, aware of these tactics, contemplates responses with his generals. Discussions are detailed and precise. How to distribute remaining supplies, when to advance or hold, how to maintain morale, and how to anticipate Russian movements. Yet despite meticulous planning, the vastness of Russia and the clever strategy of the defenders creates unpredictability. Imagine the landscapes themselves, forests dense and shadowed, rivers unpredictable in flow, plains seemingly endless. Each step eastward challenges both logistics and endurance. Soldiers navigate these environments with training and discipline, yet the constant strain is evident. Some falter from fatigue, others from hunger, and a few from the mounting psychological burden of endless desolation. The Russian retreat, though avoiding major confrontation, is a masterclass in defensive strategy. Villages that might have provided shelter are abandoned or burned. Roads that seem passable conceal hidden hazards. Rivers swell unpredictably. Even the climate begins to assert its influence subtly, with sudden rains turning roads to mud, slowing progress, and adding to exhaustion. Consider the experience of an individual soldier as a young Frenchman trudges along a dirt road, the sun burning overhead, dust clinging to his uniform. He observes the charred remains of a village where families once lived. The scent of smoke lingers. He eats a meager ration, waters his horse from a stream, and marches on, uncertain of what lies ahead. His comrades share silent glances, understanding collectively that survival depends on discipline, endurance, and luck. Engineers and logistical officers face immense challenges. Bridges must be constructed or repaired over rivers. Roads reinforced for the passage of wagons and artillery, and supplies continually rerouted to meet the needs of the advancing army. Every misstep in these calculations risks creating delays that could escalate into crisis. The psychological warfare of the scorched earth is subtle yet powerful. Soldiers grow weary not only of physical exertion, but of the emptiness that surrounds them and shelter. Their minds weigh the effort required for each mile. Meanwhile, the enemy remains elusive, striking only when advantageous, and then disappearing into the vastness of forests or across rivers. Napoleon's leadership becomes crucial. He moves among the ranks, offering guidance, reassurance, and direction. Orders are precise, movements carefully coordinated. His presence steadies the army, providing a sense of continuity amidst uncertainty. Horses, stretched to their limits, are tended meticulously. Feed is rationed carefully, and rest periods are observed whenever possible. Artillery units, essential for future engagements, are maintained with exacting attention. The coordination of movement, supply, and combat readiness becomes a daily challenge of extraordinary magnitude. Skirmishes with Russian detachments provide intermittent tests. They are brief, sharp, and often more psychological than strategic. Soldiers learn to adapt quickly, to respond to sudden attacks, and to maintain composure despite the looming uncertainties. Imagine the night once more. Fires glow softly in the encampments. The stars stretch endlessly overhead. Soldiers huddle close, sharing quiet words, tending to horses, and preparing for the next day's march. The forest whispers in the wind, and rivers murmur softly, a constant reminder of the natural world's omnipresence. That Napoleon's strategies begin to encounter the limits imposed not by men, but by land and distance. Every river crossing requires careful planning. Every forest path presents hidden obstacles. Every day of marching stretches the army's endurance. Supply lines, even with careful preparation, are tested continuously. The emptiness of the Russian countryside exacerbates shortages, forcing improvisation and adaptation. Soldiers endure the hardships with discipline and resilience. They march, tend to horses, repair equipment, and maintain vigilance. Leadership fosters order, while camaraderie and shared purpose sustain morale. The vast expanse of Russia, with its forests, rivers, and open plains, becomes both adversary and teacher. Each step eastward demands careful attention, endurance, and adaptation. The Scorched Earth strategy ensures that the army advances not only against human resistance, but also against the relentless challenge of survival itself. Let your mind absorb these details. Hear the rhythm of marching boots, the soft creaking of wagon wheels, the distant neighing of horses, the occasional murmur of soldiers' voices, and the quiet rustling of leaves. Smell the smoke, earth, and faint aroma of campfires. Feel the tension and anticipation that permeate the air. The Russian tactics, while subtle, begin to shape the campaign's narrative. Supply shortages and logistical challenges create mounting stress. The army's progress slows, morale fluctuates, and Napoleon's genius is tested against forces beyond mere human control. And so, the march continues, day after day, through the vast, unforgiving expanses of Russia. The soldiers, leaders, and horses endure together, moving steadily toward an uncertain future. Each mile is a testament to human ambition, endurance, and the subtle, relentless influence of strategy and nature. Relax and breathe. Let the images, sounds, and sensations settle in your mind. The story is unfolding slowly, inexorably, a tapestry of preparation, anticipation, and the subtle confrontation between power, strategy,
Grand
and the
Armée
vast,
pushed
deeper into Russia. The landscape began to change subtly. Rolling plains gave way to gentle hills, forests thickened, and the air carried the faint scent of pine mixed with the lingering smoke of burned villages. Every day of marching stretched the soldiers' endurance, but the anticipation of confrontation grew steadily. The Battle of Borodino, though initially a distant concept, became imminent as reports from scouts indicated Russian forces concentrated ahead. Napoleon, fully aware of the symbolic and strategic importance of Borodino, studied maps and reconnaissance reports with painstaking care. The village itself, small and unassuming, would become the stage for one of the most intense confrontations of the campaign. Picture the morning of the battle. The sky is overcast, soft light diffused through the clouds. Soldiers line the fields, muskets polished, bayonets fixed, artillery positioned carefully on gentle rises. Horses shift nervously, their breaths misting slightly in the cool air. The distant Russian army is visible across the plains, their own formations precise and disciplined, a mirror of French preparation and resolve. Napoleon moves among his generals, discussing positions, artillery placements, and potential strategies. Every detail is considered: the placement of infantry, the use of cavalry, the timing of cannon fire, and the coordination of reserves. Officers nod silently, aware that the outcome of this engagement will shape the course of the campaign. Imagine a French soldier in the front line, that he feels the weight of his musket, the tension in his shoulders, and the quiet anticipation of what is to come. Around him, comrades adjust uniforms, check weapons, and share brief words of encouragement. The air is thick with the scent of gunpowder, leather, and the faint earthy aroma of the surrounding fields. The battle begins subtly, with reconnaissance and skirmishes that probe the enemy's strength and position. Cannon fire erupts, echoing across the plains, followed by volleys of musket fire. Smoke rises slowly, curling and blending with the morning mist. The noise is intermittent at first, but steadily grows into a relentless roar of battle. Napoleon oversees movements with meticulous care. Infantry advances in careful formation. Artillery strikes are timed to maximize disruption, and cavalry units maneuver to exploit weaknesses. Every decision carries weight. Every order has consequences that ripple across the battlefield. The Russian defenders, disciplined and determined, resist with skill and strategy. They counter French advances with entrenched positions, strategically placed artillery, and timely counterattacks. Each engagement tests the coordination, morale, and endurance of the French forces. Picture the battlefield from a distance. Smoke rises in thick columns, obscuring lines of troops. Horses rear and neigh. Cannon wheels groan under the strain of repeated fire. Soldiers fall, some injured, some moving with grim determination to continue. The air vibrates with tension and anticipation. As the day progresses, the battle intensifies. French forces press forward, securing ground with careful, disciplined effort. Russian positions are contested fiercely, each foot gained hard-won. Officers coordinate movements across a vast field, ensuring that reserves are positioned effectively. Artillery is redeployed as necessary, and infantry maintains cohesion. The Battle of Borodino is emblematic of the campaign itself. Costly, intense, and ultimately indecisive in terms of strategic breakthrough. Both sides suffer significant losses, yet neither achieves a decisive advantage. The soldiers, exhausted but resolute, continue to fight with courage and discipline, aware that each action could shape the outcome of the campaign. Imagine the evening after the battle. Smoke lingers in the air, mingling with the scent of blood, gunpowder, and the faint aroma of smoldering wood. Soldiers tend to the wounded, collect equipment, and prepare for the next phase of the march. Napoleon surveys the battlefield, aware of the human cost, yet focused on the broader objectives. His army is battered, but still formidable, and Moscow lies ahead. The march to Moscow continues with renewed urgency. Villages, once familiar and now scarred by war, pass quietly. The French soldiers, weary from battle and continuous marching, rely on discipline, routine, and camaraderie to sustain themselves. Every mile covered brings the army closer to the symbolic heart of Russia, yet also deeper into uncertainty. The Russian strategy remains clear. Retreat and avoid decisive engagement where possible, drawing the French deeper into a landscape increasingly hostile to supply lines and endurance. Fires continue to consume abandoned towns, and provisions remain scarce. The army must rely on careful rationing, foraging, and ingenuity to sustain itself. AS Moscow finally appears on the horizon. The scale and emptiness of the surrounding landscape is striking. The city, grand in architecture and steeped in history, faces the advancing army with silence. Streets are deserted, shops shuttered, and smoke rises from controlled fires set by retreating defenders. The psychological impact on soldiers is profound. The city is both conquered and hollow, a symbol of victory tempered by strategic frustration. Napoleon enters Moscow with the grandeur and ceremony befitting an emperor. Yet the city's emptiness, the burned districts, and the lack of provisions highlight the effectiveness of Russian tactics. Victory here is hollow. The army cannot rest, resupply, or rely on the city to sustain the months of campaigning ahead. Imagine a soldier walking through the streets of Moscow. The ground is scorched in places, smoke rises in gentle columns, and the silence is almost oppressive. The grandeur of the city contrasts sharply with the reality of survival needs. Food, water, and shelter are scarce. Officers organize bivouacs in the open, rationing supplies carefully and preparing for the inevitable continuation of the campaign. The Battle of Borodino and the arrival in Moscow highlight the dual nature of Napoleon's invasion: impressive military coordination and human achievement, yet simultaneously a confrontation with the vastness, strategy, and indifference of Russia itself. Soldiers, despite exhaustion, maintain discipline and cohesion. Leadership, from Napoleon to unit commanders, ensures that morale is preserved as much as possible, even amidst adversity. The challenges of supply, environment, and ongoing Russian tactics continue to shape every decision. Relax and breathe. Let the sights, sounds, and sensations of Borodino and Moscow settle in your imagination. Hear the distant echoes of cannon and musket fire, the whisper of smoke rising from burned villages, the soft footfalls of soldiers on cobbled streets, and the quiet murmurs of officers coordinating movements. Feel the tension, the anticipation, and the sobering reality of human endeavor against an indifferent landscape. That Napoleon's journey through Borodino and into Moscow is a turning point. Victory is claimed in a tactical sense, yet the strategic challenges remain immense. Supply shortages, exhaustion, and the unyielding Russian tactics will soon confront the Grand Armée in ways that cannot be mitigated by skill or discipline alone. The story continues slowly and inexorably, revealing the intricate interplay of strategy, human endurance, and the vast, relentless forces battling and occupying Moscow. The reality of the campaign began to assert itself with relentless force. The Grand Armée, though once a vast and imposing force, now faced the merciless expanse of the Russian winter. The grandeur of victory in Moscow was overshadowed by scarcity, exhaustion, and the looming threat of nature itself. Soldiers trudged through streets once filled with life, now scarred by fire and desolation. Smoke lingered over abandoned homes, the scent of charred wood and ash heavy in the air. The city, though captured, offered little sustenance. Food stores were depleted or destroyed, and the few remaining provisions would not last long. Napoleon, aware of the precarious situation, faced difficult decisions. The Russian army remained unbroken but elusive. Tsar Alexander's strategy of attrition and scorched earth left the French with diminishing options. Retreat became not just a tactical consideration, but an unavoidable reality, dictated by logistics, environment, and the survival of men and horses alike. Imagine the first days of the retreat. Soldiers, already weary from long marches and battles, now face freezing temperatures, muddy roads, and dwindling supplies. Horses stumble on icy patches, their breath rising in white clouds. Cannon wheels sink in a thawing mud, and wagons are abandoned where progress is impossible. The retreat is a test of endurance unlike any previously encountered. Columns of infantry stretch endlessly across the desolate landscape, their ranks thinner with each passing day. Frost bites at exposed skin, and the constant strain of movement weakens even the strongest. Soldiers wrap themselves in cloaks, huddle near meager fires, and move with slow, careful steps. Supply lines are overextended, making resupply nearly impossible. Food, already scarce, diminishes rapidly. Horses, exhausted and underfed, falter, slowing artillery and cavalry units. Engineers and quartermasters struggle to maintain coherence in the advancing chaos. Imagine the psychological strain. Men accustomed to discipline and order now confront uncertainty and fear. Each step carries risk: frostbite, disease, or the threat of Russian attacks. The morale of soldiers fluctuates, maintained only by the presence of leaders, camaraderie, and sheer determination. Russian forces, meanwhile, shadow the retreat. Skirmishes occur intermittently, targeting stragglers, supply convoys, and isolated units. These attacks, while limited in scale, magnify the sense of danger and fatigue within the French ranks. The landscape itself becomes an adversary. Forests, once obstacles to maneuver, now provide both shelter and concealment for enemy forces. Rivers swell and freeze unpredictably, making crossings perilous. The flat plains, exposed and unforgiving, offer no respite from biting winds or relentless snow. Imagine a French soldier trudging through the winter landscape. Snow crunches underfoot, the wind cutting through layers of clothing. His musket is heavy in his hands, gloves stiff and worn. He glances at comrades moving alongside, some limping, others pale from fatigue. Horses stumble, wagons lag behind, and artillery slows to a crawl. Each mile becomes a battle against nature itself. Leadership is tested to its limits. Napoleon coordinates movements with painstaking attention, ensuring that units remain aligned, that the weak are supported, and that supply distribution is as effective as possible under the circumstances. Orders are precise, communicated with clarity, yet the scale of the retreat renders even the best planning vulnerable. Nights during the retreat are harsh and unforgiving. Soldiers huddle near sparse fires, sharing warmth, food, and brief words of encouragement. The air is filled with the scent of smoke, frost, and the earth itself. Shadows of trees and abandoned villages stretch long in the dim light, while the distant howl of wolves underscores the isolation of the army. Disease and hunger begin to take a toll. Illness spreads quickly in crowded, cold, and unsanitary conditions. Frostbite claims fingers and toes, and exhaustion weakens immune systems. Medical officers struggle to care for the wounded, limited by both supplies and the harsh environment. Imagine the constant calculation required to maintain even the semblance of order. Officers coordinate marches, ensure that supplies are distributed fairly, and monitor the health of both men and horses. The smallest disruption, a broken wagon, a fallen horse, or a sudden storm, can cascade in a broader chaos. Russian tactics continue to exacerbate the French plight. Stragglers and weak units are targeted. Skirmishes force the army to maintain vigilance, even as winter saps strength. The combination of enemy harassment and environmental hardship creates a sense of relentless pressure. The retreat becomes a slow, painful march across a vast, indifferent landscape. Every step is a balance between survival, discipline, and endurance, camaraderie, soldiers and sheer will to continue. Horses, essential for mobility and logistics, struggle under exhaustion and limited fodder. Imagine the landscape itself. Snow drifts across open plains, forests rise like walls on either side of the road, and rivers freeze and thaw unpredictably. Villages are deserted, and the few remaining structures offer little refuge. The environment is both beautiful and deadly, a constant reminder of the power of nature over human ambition, that Napoleon's personal involvement remains crucial. He moves among the troops, offering guidance, reassurance, and direction. His presence is a stabilizing force amidst uncertainty and fatigue. Every decision is deliberate, every movement calculated to preserve the cohesion and morale of the army. Despite these efforts, losses mount. Soldiers succumb to cold, hunger, and disease. Horses fall from exhaustion. Supply wagons are abandoned or lost. The once proud Grand Armée shrinks steadily, each mile of retreat exacting a heavy toll. Imagine a night in the retreat. Fires glow dimly against the snow, shadows stretching long across the frozen ground. Soldiers huddle close, wrapped in cloaks, sharing meager rations, tending to horses, and whispering prayers. The silence is broken only by the distant crunch of footsteps, the soft moans of the wounded, and the occasional crack of frost-laden branches. Leadership, discipline, and endurance are tested continually. Napoleon and his officers make decisions about movement, rationing, and rest, yet the scale of the retreat and the severity of winter ensure that no plan is immune to disruption. Soldiers endure not only physical hardship, but psychological strain. Every day brings uncertainty. Every mile carries risk. The monotony of snow-covered plains, forests, and frozen rivers weighs heavily, yet the shared purpose of survival, duty, and loyalty sustains them. Russian forces, while not engaging in full-scale battles, continue to shadow, harass, and exploit vulnerabilities. Their strategy, combined with the unforgiving winter, ensures that the retreat is as costly as any battle. Imagine the gradual thinning of ranks. The once mighty columns of the Grand Armée are now narrower, soldiers fewer, horses diminished. Wagons lag, artillery slows, and exhaustion is visible in every step. Yet discipline persists, sustained by leadership, routine, and shared purpose. The winter retreat is more than a military maneuver. It is a testament to human endurance, resilience, and the interplay of strategy, leadership, and environment. Every mile, every step, every decision carries weight. The army marches through desolation, uncertainty, and relentless hardship. Relax and breathe. Let the images of snow-covered plains, exhausted soldiers, struggling horses, and distant Russian scouts settle in your mind. Hear the crunch of snow underfoot, the whisper of wind through trees, the crackle of sparse fires, and the soft murmurs of soldiers. Feel the cold, the tension, and the quiet determination that propels the retreat forward. The retreat from Russia is the culmination of ambition, preparation, strategy, and nature's unforgiving influence that Napoleon's campaign, once marked by triumph and coordination, now confronts the limits of human endurance and the indifference of the land. Sleep lightly if you wish, absorbing the slow, inexorable passage of men, horses, and history through the vast Russian winter. Each step, each mile, is a testament to the enduring human spirit. Even in the face of the Grand Armée staggered back into territories closer to France, the echoes of the Russian campaign lingered in every exhausted soldier and officer. The winter had left its indelible mark. Frostbite, hunger, disease, and fatigue were etched into faces and bodies. Horses were gone, wagons abandoned, and artillery lost. Yet beyond the physical toll, the psychological impact was profound. The retreat from Russia was more than a military failure. It was a lesson in ambition, logistics, and the formidable power of environment. Soldiers, those surviving, carried the memories of villages burned, comrades fallen, and landscapes so vast that they seemed endless. Napoleon, returning to France, faced a different kind of battlefield. Strategy and planning had proven inadequate against the combination of Russian tactics, vast distances, and merciless winter. Political consequences loomed. Alliances shifted, and the aura of invincibility that had surrounded him began to waver. Imagine the state of the returning army. Columns of ragged, thin soldiers moved slowly through towns and villages. Their boots were worn, uniforms tattered, and expressions a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and quiet sorrow. Officers, equally weary, coordinated movements, accounted for losses, and tried to maintain discipline among the survivors. Horses, once integral to mobility and logistics, were gone or too weak to continue. Artillery, critical for previous victories, had been abandoned or destroyed. The psychological weight of the campaign is difficult to overstate. Soldiers who had marched thousands of kilometers, fought fierce battles, and endured the bitter cold of winter were now left to reconcile their experiences. Many were haunted by the loss of comrades, the sight of burned villages, and the relentless hardships of the Russian landscape. Families in France awaited news. Letters, when they arrived, were sparse and often delayed. Soldiers struggled to explain the scale of what they had endured, the failures of logistics, and the cunning of the Russian strategy. Each account was a testament to endurance, yet a reminder of vulnerability. The army's return illuminated broader strategic lessons. Napoleon's ambition, while unmatched, had underestimated the role of environment and logistics. Supply lines, though meticulously planned, were stretched beyond their limits. The vast distances, harsh winters, and scorched earth tactics of the Russians rendered even the most disciplined army vulnerable. Commanders reflected on their decisions, weighing actions against consequences. Mistakes in timing, underestimating the severity of winter, and over-reliance on rapid victories were now starkly apparent. Every lost horse, abandoned wagon, and failed supply point became a lesson in the interplay between planning and unpredictability. Imagine a French officer walking through the remnants of a former camp. Charred wood, abandoned equipment, and the faint scent of smoke linger. He surveys the frozen ground, recalling battles, marches, and the faces of men who did not survive. Each memory reinforces the gravity of strategic choices, the limits of human endurance, and the immense power of the natural world. Beyond immediate military consequences, the invasion reshaped European geopolitics. Allies and adversaries alike observed the vulnerability of Napoleon's forces. Confidence in his invincibility was shaken, providing openings for resistance, rebellion, and shifts in alliances. The Russian campaign became a turning point, signaling that even the greatest strategic minds are subject to the forces of nature, chance, and human limitation. Imagine the broader European perspective. Capitals, towns, and villages buzz with news of the retreat. Soldiers returning bring stories of frost, hunger, and tactical brilliance from the Russians. Leaders analyze reports, drawing lessons on both strategy and diplomacy. Maps are studied, routes reconsidered, and the balance of power slowly begins to shift. For the soldiers themselves, the lessons are personal. Discipline, resilience, adaptability, and endurance were tested to their limits. Each man learned the significance of preparation, the importance of cohesion, and the cost of overextension. Comradeship, leadership, and personal fortitude became as critical as muskets and cannons in surviving the ordeal. Medical officers, engineers, and logisticians reflected on their own roles. Every miscalculation, delay, or oversight in supply management had profound consequences. Frostbite, disease, and starvation highlighted the fragility of human planning when confronted with vast distances, extreme conditions, and deliberate enemy strategy. Imagine a night in the returning army's camps. Fires flicker weakly, smoke rising in spirals. Soldiers, wrapped in tattered cloaks, huddle close for warmth. Conversation is minimal, whispers recounting experiences and losses. The scent of smoke and frozen earth mingles with fatigue and lingering sorrow. Officers move among them, checking equipment, distributing remaining supplies, and offering quiet reassurance. Leadership is crucial, not to command battle, but to sustain life, morale, and hope. Historians would later examine the invasion with a mix of admiration and caution that Napoleon's organizational genius, tactical skill, and ambition were unmatched. Yet, the invasion of Russia became a case study in the limits of strategy, the importance of preparation, adaptability, and humility before nature's vastness emerged clearly. Imagine the roads leading back into Poland and France. Soldiers moved steadily, step by step, haunted by memories, yet driven by the instinct to survive. Villages and towns provide sporadic refuge. The winter wind cuts sharply, yet resilience endures. Horses, few in number, carry the weary, while wagons transport the essential remaining supplies that Napoleon's personal reflections, though rarely recorded in the same detail as campaigns, reveal the weight of experience. Each decision, each order, each success and failure became part of a complex calculus of leadership, ambition, and human limitation. The retreat and aftermath provided lessons in patience, planning, and respect for both the environment and human endurance. Soldiers write letters, recalling the campaign with vivid memory. Their accounts describe the harsh landscapes, the brilliance of certain maneuvers, the tragedy of losses, and the enduring sense of comradeship. Each story is a testament to both human capacity and vulnerability. Villages along the return route witness the return of the army. Some observe with relief, others with apprehension. Fires are rekindled, markets slowly reopen, and the rhythm of civilian life resumes. Yet the shadow of the Russian campaign remains. The legacy of the invasion endures in multiple dimensions: military, political, and human. Military theorists study the logistics, strategy, and execution of both advance and retreat. Political leaders consider alliances, power dynamics, and the broader implications of overreach. Humanity itself is tested through endurance, resilience, and adaptability under extreme conditions. Imagine the evening of the final return to France. Soldiers, weary and silent, walk through familiar towns and fields. Fires glow in the distance. The scent of bread, with smoke and damp earth fills the air. Comrades exchange quiet words, relieved to be home, yet forever marked by the vastness, the winter, and the challenges of Russia. Relax and reflect. Let the slow, inexorable passage of the army through Russia, the victories and losses, the battles and retreats, settle in your mind. Consider the lessons, the limits of ambition, the importance of preparation, the power of leadership, and the humbling influence of nature itself. That Napoleon's invasion of Russia stands as a profound narrative of human ambition, strategic brilliance, and the inexorable realities of the environment. Soldiers endured, leaders calculated, and the land itself proved an unyielding adversary. Sleep lightly as the story concludes. Each step of the retreat, each mile of march, each moment of struggle and survival is a testament to endurance, resilience, and the quiet, patient force of history. Reflect on the scale, the lessons, and the human spirit, allowing the enormity of this campaign to resonate more than a military operation. It was a profound human ordeal, testing every limit of endurance, resilience, and courage. As the Grand Armée staggered through snow-covered plains and icy forests, the realities of the campaign's toll became starkly evident. Frostbite claimed fingers and toes, hunger gnawed at bodies already weakened by exhaustion, and disease spread rapidly among the dense columns of soldiers. Imagine a French infantryman, young and inexperienced, yet forced to confront the harshest winter of his life. Each day begins before dawn, feet numb in boots, hands stiff in gloves, and every mile a battle against cold, fatigue, and despair. His uniform, once pristine, is tattered. His body bears the marks of blisters, bruises, and frostbite. Around him, comrades collapse from exhaustion or illness, some never to rise again. Officers move steadily, offering encouragement, but the sheer scale of suffering overwhelms any single individual. Food is scarce. Rations that were meticulously planned are gone, lost in abandoned supply wagons, or consumed during the previous marches. Soldiers forage where they can, roots, frozen grains, or small animals, often sharing meager portions with horses. The bond between man and animal becomes visceral. The loss of a horse is not only logistical, but deeply personal. Medical officers and surgeons face unimaginable challenges. Makeshift hospitals, often tents or barns, are filled with frostbitten, malnourished, and wounded men. Surgery is performed with minimal instruments. Amputation is common, infection inevitable. Despite their tireless work, the mortality rate is staggering. The human cost is quantified not merely in numbers, but in suffering, endurance, and the psychological scars left on survivors. Nights are bitterly cold. Soldiers huddle around small fires, the smoke curling faintly into a star-strewn sky. Conversations are sparse. Some whisper prayers, others recount memories of home or lost comrades. The silence is punctuated by the distant creak of ice-laden branches, the soft whinny of a struggling horse, or the groans of the wounded. The psychological burden is immense. Hope wavers as each day brings new hardships. Morale fluctuates wildly. Camaraderie sustains some, while despair overtakes others. Letters from home are rare, delayed, or lost entirely, leaving soldiers disconnected from the lives they once knew. Yet, even in despair, discipline and routine are essential for survival. Officers face dilemmas at every turn. Decisions regarding the march's pace, allocation of dwindling supplies, or treatment of the wounded are fraught with consequences. A misstep can lead to the loss of men, horses, or artillery, further compounding the tragedy of the retreat. Leadership is tested not in grand strategy, but in sustaining life under relentless adversity. Russian forces, though not engaging in major battles, exploit every weakness. Stragglers and isolated units are harassed, forcing vigilance at all times. The threat is subtle but constant, exacerbating the psychological and physical strain. Imagine the vast expanse of Russia itself. Forests thick with snow, rivers frozen or swollen unpredictably, plains stretching endlessly under gray skies. Nature is an indifferent adversary, testing the limits of human endurance. The retreat is not merely a military movement. It is a struggle for survival against both environment and circumstance. Beyond soldiers, the human cost encompasses civilians and communities. Villages burned, crops destroyed, and livestock lost represent suffering far beyond the battlefield. The Russian scorched earth strategy ensured that even occupation brought no relief or comfort. Civilian hardship intertwined with military struggle, creating a landscape where survival was the paramount concern for all. The retreat is punctuated by small acts of humanity and resilience. Soldiers share rations, protect the weak, and tend to wounded comrades with extraordinary care. Despite extreme conditions, bonds are strengthened, loyalty deepened, and the human spirit endures. These moments, though fleeting, become the most vivid memories for those who survive. Imagine a long winter night near a frozen river. Soldiers wrap themselves in tattered cloaks, leaning against one another for warmth. Fires crackle dimly, horses huddle nearby. Some sing softly, others whisper prayers, all quietly enduring the ordeal together. The silence is punctuated only by the wind and the distant echoes of movement along icy paths. The human cost extends to leadership and strategy. Napoleon and his generals confront limitations previously unimagined. Even the most disciplined army, the most brilliant logistical planning, cannot fully counter nature, scarcity, and exhaustion. Every day of retreat offers lessons in patience, adaptation, and humility. Let the scale of loss be clear. Tens of thousands of men and horses, countless artillery pieces, wagons, and supplies. But more than numbers, it is the stories of human courage, endurance, and tragedy that define the cost. Soldiers who survive carry the memories of fallen comrades, extreme suffering, and the unyielding environment. Reflection reveals enduring truths. Warfare is not solely a contest of tactics, but of human endurance, resourcefulness, and adaptation. Every march, every skirmish, every frozen mile tests the limits of both body and spirit. The Grand Army's retreat from Russia is a lesson in resilience, suffering, and the ultimate cost of ambition unchecked by environmental reality. As soldiers finally cross back into safer territories, they are forever changed. Faces are gaunt, bodies weakened, yet the collective spirit, though scarred, remains unbroken. Memories of frost, hunger, and loss coexist with the quiet pride of survival. Relax and breathe. Imagine the snow-laden roads, the exhausted soldiers, the huddled horses, and the faint glow of distant fires. Feel the resilience, endurance, and human spirit that persists even amidst devastation. The human cost is immense, yet it is also a profound testament
of the
to
Russian
courage
campaign
and
survival.
reshaped Europe, Napoleon's legacy, and the understanding of human endurance. The invasion, initially framed as a demonstration of military brilliance and ambition, became a cautionary tale of overreach, logistical failure, and the limits of strategy. The retreat highlighted that even the greatest army is subject to environmental realities and the consequences of calculated risk. Soldiers returning to France carried stories of suffering, endurance, and the stark lessons of the campaign. Villages and towns along the route witnessed ragged columns of survivors, their faces etched with frost, exhaustion, and memories of fallen comrades. These images became symbols of both human resilience and vulnerability that Napoleon's reputation, once untouchable, began to show cracks. Alliances shifted, rival powers observed vulnerabilities, and internal dissent emerged. Political and military analysts debated the campaign's significance, emphasizing lessons in logistics, environmental adaptation, and strategic patience. Imagine an officer writing letters home. Every word recounts not just battles, but the hardships endured. Frozen rivers, scorched villages, abandoned artillery, and the relentless winter. The human dimension, the endurance and suffering, is as much a lesson as any tactical maneuver. The campaign left a lasting imprint on military thought. Logistic planning became paramount. Generals studied the limitations imposed by distance, weather, and supply chains. Maps were revised, strategies reconsidered, and doctrines evolved to prevent similar disasters. Yet the campaign's legacy was not solely strategic. It reshaped the understanding of leadership, resilience, and the human spirit. Soldiers who survived gained an intimate knowledge of endurance, camaraderie, and adaptation. These lessons extended beyond the battlefield, influencing personal, political, and cultural spheres. Consider Napoleon himself. Reflections on the campaign reveal a combination of pride in tactical achievements and recognition of profound limitations. The Russian winter, scorched earth, and logistical strain highlighted vulnerabilities that could not be mitigated by brilliance alone. Imagine the streets of Paris upon the return of the army. Citizens, curious and anxious, greeted returning soldiers. Families reunited, yet the shadow of loss lingered. The stories told and witnessed became part of collective memory, shaping the understanding of sacrifice, ambition, and survival. The Russian campaign also reshaped the European balance of power. Nations observed weaknesses, adjusted alliances, and prepared for future conflicts. Napoleon's aura of invincibility diminished, demonstrating that strategic overreach can carry profound consequences. The human dimension remains central. Soldiers, officers, and civilians experienced the campaign not merely as history, but as an intimate encounter with endurance, loss, and adaptation. Frostbite, hunger, and disease became lessons in humility and resilience, reinforcing that human ambition must contend with environmental and logistical realities. Reflection reveals enduring truths. Leadership is not only about decisive victories, but about sustaining life, morale, and cohesion amidst adversity. Strategy is interwoven with human limits, and the forces of nature remain an omnipresent variable. Relax as you envision the final miles of the campaign. Soldiers move slowly through familiar landscapes, changed yet enduring. Horses, few in number, carry the weak. Wagons transport meager supplies. Every step is a testament to endurance, resilience, and the quiet power of human spirit. Historians would later study the Russian campaign as a defining moment in military history. The lessons learned extend beyond tactics. Logistical foresight, environmental awareness, adaptability, and the psychological dimension of warfare are emphasized. Imagine the quiet evenings in France. Soldiers share stories with family and comrades. Memories of harsh winter nights, burning villages, and fallen friends coexist with relief and pride in survival. Communities reconstruct and honor those lost, embedding lessons and narratives into collective memory. The campaign's legacy is multifaceted: military, political, and human. It underscores the delicate balance between ambition and limitation, strategy and environment, human skill and endurance. The invasion of Russia endures as a narrative of extraordinary ambition, profound challenge, and the resilient human spirit. Sleep lightly as this story concludes. Absorb the lessons, reflections, and human experiences. Every mile, every hardship, every act of endurance forms a tapestry of history, reminding us that while human ambition can achieve remarkable feats, it remains bound by environment, logistics, and the resilience of both nature and humanity.